Hey everyone, today we're going to continue our devotion series on faith by looking at how we can walk with God and please Him even though we're sinful and busy and broken people. I think the best way to do that is by looking at the life of Enoch. Enoch is by far one of my favorite people in all of Scripture because even though there's only, I think, 7 verses about him, I just think he is awesome. And I could probably talk about him for days without breaking a sweat. But I'm going to try and keep it short for your sake. So first in Hebrews chapter 11, this has kind of been the main passage for this series. In verse 5, it says, "By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death and was not found because God had translated him." And when it says translated, all it means is that God took him, that he was there one minute and then the next he wasn't. So I've always thought of it as like he was just walking along the road and he took one step and he was on earth, and then the next step he was just in heaven. It's like, whoa. That's how I think of it. But you can judge for yourself, but that's all that means when it says translated. But the verse goes on to say that before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God. And verse 6 says that without faith, it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. And if you go back to Genesis chapter 5, this is the first place that we're introduced to Enoch. And it follows the similar pattern of everybody else in the genealogy, where it tells us how old he was when he had a specific son, and that he lived to be this long, and that he had other sons and daughters. But there's one piece that is different for Enoch that I want to highlight. And it says it in verse 22, but then again, really in verse 24, it says specifically, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him." So basically, and this is one of my favorite parts in the entire story about Enoch, there was a time that God felt that he was tired of Enoch not being with him, and so he just took him. So when he said, Hebrews says translated, Genesis says for he was not, it just means he was not there because God just wanted to be with him so badly, because he pleased him, because he walked with him. And I think for us today, I think we hear about walking with God and that it's something that we should do, and we all have this desire to please God, and we know Hebrews 11:6 tells us that without faith it's impossible. But I think a lot of times we trip ourselves up because we feel like we just don't have the time. I don't have time to walk with God. I think because we think when someone says walk with God that they mean spend 8 hours alone in the secret place in intense Bible study and prayer, where like Jesus, you're sweating because you're just so intense with the Lord. But that's not it. I think the real secret to walking with God is walking with Him throughout your day. So in this season, maybe you're a busy parent who is working from home, but you have kids who you're trying to homeschool and feed and occupy and entertain all day instead of just a short portion of the day. And so you might say, I have 0 time to spend walking with God. Or maybe you work more now. Maybe you're considered one of those essential employees and you have a busier schedule now, and you think, well, I work 14-hour days, and so by the time I get home, it's time to eat dinner. I have about a 20-second conversation with my family, and then I go to bed because I'm wiped. So I don't have time to be with God. But the real secret, in my opinion, and what we see from the life of Enoch, is that we are just meant to be with God throughout our day. So while you're at work and you're struggling and maybe you're tired, or you have a coworker who has just rubbed you the wrong way and you just want to get back at them, asking God for strength or asking God for patience. Maybe as you're at home with your kids and you're working and it feels like chaos and you just want even 4 seconds of peace would be nice. Asking God for that patience. Talking with God like you would your friend on the phone. So talking with him, and then taking care of your kids, and then maybe as you're doing that, you go back to talking with God, or as they're doing something else, you go back to talking with God. I think for me, that's the best way it's ever been described by one of my college professors. Just talking with him throughout the day. And I really think it's important to know that we have to remember that Enoch isn't the Messiah. Enoch's not some perfect figure that we're all striving towards, and I'm telling you that I want you to be exactly like him, but you can't because he's perfect. That's not the case. Because he wasn't the Messiah, we know that Enoch also sinned. The Bible doesn't tell us that. Enoch had the testimony of walking with God in the midst of his sin, in the midst of his busyness with however many kids he had, which the lowest number possible we know is 5, at least. So in the midst of that busyness, in the midst of his being human, just like you and I, he walked with God so much that by faith he pleased him. So my question for you is walking with God worth your time? Do you think it is worth your time? Because we have so much going on, especially now, but even before and later, we have so much going on. But is walking with God throughout your day worth your time? Do you spend time with him alone? Do you consider God to be your constant companion? The only other thing I would say maybe is to go and read Colossians chapter 3 as you're looking for ways to walk with God, and you're trying to do this more and get better at it. Colossians chapter 3 is a fantastic list of things that you should focus on and things that you should not focus on as you begin to walk with God more intentionally. Really, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as somebody who walked with God because it was worth their time? Or somebody who loves God but just didn't have time for him? We can all strive to have the same testimony that Enoch had. But the question is it worth it to you? Whether you have more time now in quarantine or you have less, I would encourage you to spend your time walking with God because it's worth it.